In just 72 hours, President Ibrahim Traoré secured something no African leader had before, a long-term defense pact with Pakistan and 100 JF-17 Thunder fighter jets. But what truly stunned observers was the personal gift he received from Pakistan's Prime Minister, a $50 million custom watch, wrapped not just in velvet but in meaning. This wasn't mere diplomacy. It was a brotherhood carved in steel, fuel, and gold. The story of this visit would echo across continents. The Lion of Africa had just landed in the Falcon's Nest and the world took notice. The sun had barely risen over Ouagadougou when Ibrahim Traoré's encrypted phone buzzed. On the screen, an international line he didn't recognize. His chief of staff hesitated. "Answer it," Traoré said calmly. A deep voice followed. "President Traoré, this is Islamabad. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif would like a direct conversation." Traoré stood still. The line clicked. Then came a voice marked with sincerity and weight. "President Traoré, we invite you not as a guest but as a brother. Visit us, speak with our youth, see our army, and let us show what unity between Africa and Asia looks like." The president didn't speak right away. His mind raced. Why now? Why Pakistan? But in his gut he already knew. The global south was awakening, and this was its call to arms. This wasn't just another diplomatic invitation. Traoré could feel it. Since Burkina Faso's pivot away from colonial influence, global alliances had reshuffled. But this was different. Pakistan had its own scars, decades of foreign manipulation, military strength hardened by necessity, and a people deeply rooted in faith and resilience. The invitation from Islamabad wasn't a token gesture. It was a statement. Traoré sat alone in his war room later that night. The glow from a single desk lamp cast his face half in shadow. He studied dossiers: Pakistan's fighter jet production, its regional alliances, its technological autonomy. He remembered Burkina Faso's air force, outdated, vulnerable. He thought of his soldiers, his people, and the children waving handmade flags at rallies. He turned to his advisors and said, "Prepare the jet, we fly to Pakistan." At that moment, Africa had answered Asia. The aircraft pierced the blue skies over Islamabad as military bands warmed their instruments on the runway. Thousands had gathered, school children waving flags, veterans in medals, civilians holding signs that read, "Welcome, Traoré." As the plane landed, Pakistani fighter jets soared overhead in tribute. The red carpet unrolled slowly across the tarmac. When the aircraft door opened, Ibrahim Traoré emerged, dressed in a flowing white mossy robe trimmed with gold, his iconic red beret anchored firmly on his head. Thunderous applause, dole drums mixed with Senegalese rhythms as the flags of Pakistan and Burkina Faso danced side by side in the wind. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif approached, his arms open. "Welcome, brother." Inside the marble halls of the Prime Minister's residence, history whispered from every portrait: Gina, Iqbal, Fatima. And now Traoré over a traditional lunch of lamb karahi and millet-based dishes brought from Burkina Faso. The two leaders spoke not just as statesmen but as visionaries. "We do not want charity," Traoré said. "We want dignity, partnership." Sharif nodded. "In Pakistan doesn't offer chains. We offer engines, alliances, and friendship." They discussed agriculture, education, and infrastructure. But the topic that dominated was defense. "Your jets," Traoré said, "could protect not just my borders, but my continent's dignity." Sharif leaned forward. "Then let's not talk about if, let's talk about how." Traoré's convoy cut through Islamabad toward Camera, home of the Pakistan Aeronautical Complex. As they arrived, 4 JF-17 Thunders roared into the sky in perfect formation. On the ground, rows of engineers and pilots stood at attention. The lead engineer, a woman named Lt. Kolamina Tariq, walked Traoré through the gleaming hangars. "These jets are built here, designed here, flown by our people, and soon, yours too." Traoré placed a hand on one jet, his reflection shimmering on its surface. "It's not the machine," he whispered, "it's the message." He turned to the lined-up. "Pilots, discipline is your compass, loyalty your flame. From Ouagadougou to Islamabad, may our skies be free." A silence, then a salute, and then applause. Later that day, in a special assembly at the Air Force Auditorium, Traoré was invited to speak directly to a group of Pakistani cadets and commanders. The room, filled with disciplined energy, fell silent as he took the stage. He spoke not with pomp but with purpose. "I stand before you not just as a president, but as a fellow soldier. I know the weight of command. I know the silence that follows a fallen comrade. And I know the dream of every patriot to see their skies sovereign." He looked at them in the eyes. "Africa and Asia have bled under the same sun. Today, we rise under it together." The crowd erupted, not out of formality but from a sense of brotherhood. The next morning, beneath the towering white minarets of Faisal Mosque, a grand platform had been erected. Tens of thousands had gathered. The venue was flanked by screens, and the air hummed. With anticipation, Traoré approached a podium. Standing alongside Prime Minister Sharif, as he looked across the sea of faces, he began, "This mosque was built by vision. My nation too is built by faith, not just in God, but in our people." He spoke of colonization, resistance, and dignity, of children in Burkina Faso who dream of flying, and of unity between two continents long divided by oceans, but not by spirit. Africa is not a land of lack. It is a land of promise. And Pakistan is not a partner of pity but a partner of purpose. The speech concluded with a powerful line: today we pray not only with words but with will. From Ouagadougou to Islamabad we are one Ummah, one force, one future. Thunderous applause. Some wept, others raised flags. History had just been made. That afternoon, within the high-security compound in Rawalpindi, Traore and Sharif entered. A closed-door session with Pakistan's top military brass. Maps were rolled out. Slides detailed military logistics, potential joint training programs, and encrypted tech transfers. Traore asked pointed questions. His military background showed. We don't just need planes, he said. We need autonomy. We need our youth trained to fly, to fix, to defend. General Asif Mahmoud replied, then we will build training academies in Burkina Faso with our best instructors. A silence followed, then a handshake. This wasn't about optics anymore. It was about strategy, survival, and legacy. That evening, during a state banquet at the President House in Islamabad, lights dimmed as a velvet box was placed before Traore. Inside lay the Graph Illuminera rare, custom-crafted $50 million timepiece. Intricate calligraphy etched into its face in Urdu and more read, time for unity, time for destiny. Prime Minister Sharif stood. This is not a gift, he said. This is a token of the future we will build together. Traore accepted it, with grace, not pride, he whispered. The time is ours. Just when the room thought the evening had peaked, Sharif raised his glass again. Burkina Faso will receive 100 JF-17 Thunder fighter jets over the next 5 years. The first 10 delivered this year. Applause shook the hall. Cameras flashed. Diplomats exchanged stunned glances. Traore remained still for a moment, then stood. We will not use these jets to intimidate. We will use them to inspire, not to dominate but to defend our right to be free. He raised his glass to sovereignty, to the south. On the final morning, thousands lined the streets to the airport. Young girls held signs. Come back soon, Lion of Africa. As the convoy approached, the military band played a soulful medley of both nations' anthems. At the foot of the plane, Sharif waited. The two leaders embraced. This is not goodbye, Sharif said. This is the first page. Traore nodded, then turned to the crowd, raising a hand. The jet engines roared to life. As the aircraft rose into the sky, a new chapter took flight. In Burkina Faso, the arrival was met with joyous chaos. Streets were flooded, children climbed trees to see his motorcade, and musicians played victory tunes. Traore stood before a sea of citizens and said, Pakistan treated us not as guests but as equals, not as a nation in need but as a nation of worth. He looked skyward. And when our jets fly, they will carry the spirit of every African child who dared to dream. In the quiet of his residence that evening, Traore removed the watch. Setting it beside a single rose, he reflected not on handshakes or headlines, but on moments, a cadet's salute, a child's chant, a leader's promise. This wasn't just a state visit. It was the birth of a new axis. For too long, Africa was invited only to listen, he said. Now, we are speaking loud and clear. The footage of Traore's visit flooded global media. Analysts debated. Youths celebrated. Veterans wept. But in Burkina Faso and Pakistan, something else took root. Enrollment at aviation academies surged. The engineers began designing joint satellite systems. Artists painted murals of the two flags intertwined, and in the capital square of Ouagadougou, a statue was unveiled. Traore's hand extended toward the east. Behind him a formation of fighter jets. Above him the sun. The plaque read, he came as a guest, he left as a brother. He returned as a symbol. History had turned. Africa and Asia were no longer the audience, they were the authors.